In our last video, we talked about Tofen Vane, a Force-sensitive aristocrat from Valahari whose parents refused to let the Jedi Order take him in for training. We discussed how his father, Harco Vane, brought Valahari over to the CIS and was killed trying to get through the Republic's blockade of his homeworld, and how his death led Tofun to join the Confederate Navy as a starfighter pilot. Where we left off, Tofun and his raiders had begun a string of attacks against Republic Navy targets, destroying entire fleets in the name of Confederacy. All the while, Tofun hungered for revenge against the Jedi pilot he deemed responsible for his father's death, Anakin Skywalker. He would ultimately get his wish for a battle with the Republic's greatest pilot, as we're going to discuss in this video.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Tofun's raiders won battle after battle for the Confederacy, killing over a dozen Jedi and thousands of clones. As Tofen Vane began to rack up the kills, he became a hero to Separatists across the galaxy. The CIS shadow feed and other Separatist propaganda outlets made him into a figurehead, a human face for the Confederacy to wear. Tofun posed a real threat to the Republic, forcing Republic High Command to bring their own ace pilot into the fray. Predicting that Tofun's raiders would attack a blockade in the Hexa system next, the Jedi Council sent Skywalker and his men to meet Valahari there. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi did some digging around on Valahari and found what he had been looking for, proof that Dooku was behind Harco Vane's death. He found a security recording of Asajj Ventress planting explosives on Vane's freighter and rushed to tell the Lady Elidor. It was too late, however. Elidor had left the system with Count Dooku, whom she was planning to marry. Kenobi was forced to relay his information to Anakin in the hopes that he could somehow get it through to Tofen Vane. Skywalker doubted his chances of getting through to the fledgling hero of the Confederacy, but he resolved to try. Tofun and his raiders had set up shop in the Vale Nebula, a highly dangerous gas cloud that few pilots dared to enter. In the heart of the nebula, they built Harco Station, a manufacturing facility and command base. There, Valahari work crews churned out more of Tofun's Tempest Zero starfighters for the raiders. As Anakin arrived in the Hexa system, Tofun met with his mother and Count Dooku aboard the station. From them, he learned of the Hexus blockade, and immediately set off with the raiders to challenge Skywalker. Upon entering the Hexa system, Tofun's raiders began an immediate assault on the Star Destroyers present, hoping to break the Republic's blockade. But before they could even begin their attack run, they suffered several casualties. Skywalker had entered the fray and had began picking off Tofun's pilots left, right and center. Tofun resolved to deal with his father's supposed murderer himself, ordering the rest of his men to stay on course for the Star Destroyers. Tofun and Skywalker split off from the battle, beginning their long-awaited rematch. Tofun's Tempest Zero proved to be considerably faster and more maneuverable than Skywalker's Delta 7B. Anakin managed to evade his adversary anyway, however, and he had R2-D2 hack into Tofun's communications. He tried to tell Tofun that Dooku was responsible for his father's death, but this only enraged the Valahari aristocrat further. Tofun landed several hits on Skywalker's fighter, forcing the famed Jedi pilot to crash land on a nearby moon. Tofun swooped in to finish him off, but Skywalker used his lightsaber to reflect Tofun's laser cannon bolts right back at the Tempest Zero. Tofun too crashed on the moon. As Skywalker approached Tofun's crashed fighter, Tofun ordered XT, his repair droid, to fire a missile at the Jedi Knight. Skywalker managed to avoid a fiery death, but he was stunned by the blast, and Tofun had him at blaster point before he could retrieve his lightsaber. As XT began repairing the Tempest Zero, Skywalker and Tofun argued over the politics of the Clone Wars and Valahari's succession. Skywalker finally managed to tell him that Dooku had killed Harco Vane to bring the Valahari into the war, but Tofun refused to listen. He decided to spare Skywalker and leave him in the Tempest Zero, but he warned Skywalker that he would not show mercy again. As Republic reinforcements arrived, Tofun ordered his pilots to retreat back to Harco Station. Unbeknownst to him, however, this was just what Skywalker had wanted him to do. As the two of them had had their argument on the Hexus moon, R2-D2 had planted a tracking device on the Tempest Zero. Unknowingly, Tofun led the Republic right to his base in the Vale Nebula, and the Republic immediately started planning an assault. The Republic's plan to bring down Tofun's raiders was simple. Skywalker and fellow Jedi pilots Saesee Tiin and Plo Koon would lead a V-19 Torrent squadron into battle to draw off the raiders, while Kenobi would take a fleet of Star Destroyers to destroy Harco Station's manufacturing facilities. But right away, a problem with this plan presented itself. As Skywalker and Gold Squadron closed in on Harco Station, Tofun's raiders attacked first. As fate would have it, Tofun discovered the tracking device R2 had placed on the Tempest Zero and had prepared for the Republic's assault. As his pilots engaged Skywalker's, the two ace pilots entered into single combat once more. This time, Anakin had a new ship, a prototype of the Pt.2 interceptors the Jedi would adopt later in the Clone Wars. It proved to be every bit as fast and maneuverable as Tempest Zero, and Skywalker and Tofun were evenly matched. As the greatest pilots of the Clone Wars battled each other, Kenobi and the Republic fleet closed in on Harco Station. But as they began to shell the station's manufacturing facilities, the station sent out a signal, an imitation of a Nebrae Manta brood mother's distress cry. The Nebrae that lived in the Vale Nebula proceeded to attack the Republic's warships in defense of the station, which they perceived as one of their own. The massive creatures destroyed the entire Star Destroyers, forcing Kenobi to pull back. Thinking quickly, Ahsoka Tano came up with an alternative plan. As the Republic fleet retreated, she hopped into the cockpit of a Y-Wing and led Shadow Squadron into the fray. With Tofun's raiders still engaged with other Republic squadrons, Ahsoka and Shadow Squadron easily punched through Harco Station's defenses and bombed the place to hell. The battle was over, for everyone except Skywalker and Tofun, that is. As the rest of Tofun's raiders surrendered and the Republic began mop-up operations, Tofun and Skywalker continued to fire away at each other. Both of their craft had sustained severe damage, but neither was willing to give up. The two had proved to be just as skillful as each other. The battle had become a contest of which starfighter would fail its pilot first. Ultimately, it was the Tempest Zero that gave away. Tofun's many battles had taken a toll on his craft, and after a sustained dogfight, one of Tempest Zero's engines caught fire. It was too late for Tofun to eject. The flames breached the cockpit quickly and the whole ship was beginning to shut down. But Anakin Skywalker wasn't willing to let Tofun die that easily. He towed the Tempest Zero into the hangar of the nearest Star Destroyer, where he tore Tofen out of the cockpit and called for medics. It was too late, however. Tofen Vane had suffered severe burns and wasn't going to make it. As he died, he asked one last thing of his former rival, to avenge him and his father. Tofen Vane was brought back to Valahari as a hero, despite the planet's withdrawal from the Confederacy. Shortly before the Battle of Vale Nebula, Elidor Vane learned of Dooku's role in her husband's murder. After Tofun's death, she banished him from Valahari and returned the planet to isolation. The Clone Wars were over for Valahari, she declared. They had lost enough of their heroes to the conflict. Tofun was buried next to his father in a small ceremony, at which Anakin Skywalker was present. Tofen Vane was much like Anakin Skywalker, and not just for his skills as a pilot. He was dedicated to the cause he fought for, a true believer in the Confederacy of Independent Systems. He wasn't just out for revenge. His heart went out to the poor and oppressed peoples of the Outer Rim, those worlds the Republic had neglected for centuries and, when they rebelled, had tried to starve into submission. At the end of his life, he was one of the select few to see the truth of the Clone Wars, the evil that both sides represented. He resented the Republic more, but he had his reasons and they were perfectly just. His campaign against the Republic was a crusade on behalf of those the Republic had oppressed for millennia. But unbeknownst to all involved, the whole Valahari campaign had been arranged by Darth Sidious. He considered the noble houses of Valahari and its allies to be a threat to the soon-to-be Empire, and wished for them to be weakened. With both Harco Vane and Tofen Vane dead, he had what he wanted. even if it had come at the cost of his apprentice's credibility. Everything was proceeding according to plan. So that's the second part of the story of Tofen Vane, the hero of the Confederacy. But what do you think? Did you enjoy this story? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments below.
And just before you run off to the suggested videos, guys, make sure you check out our new channel called The Braved, where we dive deep into history and go through all different eras to find some of the most badass individuals and tell their stories in a high quality format there. We post weekly, so make sure you check it out. And if you're just more into music, check out our Relax Shack music channel, where we take the music there and chuck them on the videos here. And if you just want to get access to a behind the scenes Discord where you can chat to myself and the entire team there, and get access to exclusive content, then consider donating to the Patreon. And if you just want to join our wider community, check us out on our main Geetsly's Discord where you can chat to myself and other Star Wars fans, and our Geetsly's Gaming Network, which is almost done, guys, so get hyped for an epic Clone Wars Garry's Mod server. Anyways, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.